I call this public hearing to order. We'll now turn it over to our solicitor, Tom Finn.
Yes, as set forth on the agenda for this particular, yeah, it's on. I gotta speak into it. This is a public hearing agenda relative to the purpose to receive public comment on a request from J.J. Hadley and Company Brewers LLC at a business known as Hadley's to approve an economic development liquor license from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board for the business located at 1400 slash 1402 and a half 11th Avenue in Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania. Notice this hearing was published in the Altoona Mirror on May 31 and June 7, 2021. The property address was also posted with notice of this hearing on June 4, 2021. At this time, we'd ask the applicant if he could make his presentation to the council as to what specifically he's asking and his basis for saying. Yep.
Good evening. The purpose of the request, as many of you know, we operate a pizzeria brewery downtown, and the idea is to be able to expand operations down there. We actually purchased the next door property, and with the restaurant license, we'll get a few more additional opportunities. One would be earlier dining, earlier serving. Since the beginning, we've had an idea to offer a brunch down there, and two reasons why. One, we would like to hire more individuals, and this helps balance out hours. It's hard to hire people just for one shift. And then two, there's one thing I've noticed, especially watching the last several weeks go by. On Sundays, there's just not a lot of businesses open, if any, on 11th. And my idea, and I know I spoke with a lot of other folks in support, would just be if we can make that a more alive Sunday. And there's more things going on now, but if we can make the whole day more family friendly, more walkable downtown, that's one reason why. The immediate impact to the area, obviously the most visual things is hiring. You know, it's probably the quickest impact. Some of the other things that probably over time we would see. I'm not native to Altoona. We moved here some time ago, but then in 2017 we had to make a decision whether to do this project in State College, Pittsburgh, or Altoona, and we had both ties to State College and Pittsburgh. And one of the reasons we chose this area, I met a lot of great people, so that was helpful. And two, the opportunity in the area. It's easier to leave a mark or improve or see improvement on a scale we were looking at versus being, oh, you're the next restaurant in Pittsburgh, or you're the next this. So that's something I just always wanted to make an impact. And so from our expanding point of view, I think it does help with population retention, and then over time, people that actually recruit into the area, it helps with recruiting, because it is nice to drive by a fully active live downtown sometime in the near future, and take your prospect to, whether it's like a UPMC, Penn State, Altoona, things like that. So I think short term, we'll see immediate effects with hiring, longer term, more hiring, and then hopefully positive impacts on community. So
you're definitely making a positive impact downtown. So thank you for that.
And
Try.
And we're glad to have your business in Altoona.
I mean, thank you, and I think it was a great choice.
Any additional questions from members of council?
I have no questions.
At this point, council will receive public comments on the presentation and the application. I would just note that any public comments, they're to address the comments to the council, not the applicant. Is there anyone present who's here to comment upon this request that's before the council right now? Do we have anyone online? Does anyone from council wish to comment any further on the application or the presentation?
No. Okay, seeing none, we will adjourn this hearing and move into our regularly scheduled city council meeting. I call this Altoona City Council meeting to order Tuesday, June 15th. We will now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Butterball.
Here.
Councilman Kushadi. Here. Councilman Carper.
Here.
Councilman Ickes.
Here.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Pacifico.
Here. Okay, we have a presentation this evening. Joining us from the Blair Regional YMCA is Phyllis Baker and Frank Capriva to talk about the annual 4th of July race.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. We just want to come and say thank you for allowing us to have this race again. Last year we did not miss a beat, and actually I believe that the race that was held last year on July 4th was the first race held, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, foot race during the pandemic. So we met every restriction and guideline that had to be met. We had 6-foot marks down in front of the Mishler Theater, and everyone followed all the rules, and it was a great celebration. The tradition that has been going on for 47 years with this race continued, and the only time that it has not continued is when a bridge was out for construction and there was an informal running of the race. But we're excited to kind of get back to normal, so to speak, this year. There aren't any restrictions that we need to follow, so we don't have to limit the number of participation. And we have been making contacts with people on the course to try to get the support. And the feedback we're getting from everybody from last year and into this year is they just love this tradition. And without the support of you and the city council and all the other organizations on the course, we wouldn't be able to do it. But Phyllis is going to talk more about that.
Yeah, we're really pleased to hold this in Altoona and showcase the great city, because we sort of went into the town and go right down to the other. But without the police chief, Merrill, and Chief Heilman, we couldn't do it without you guys, because you keep us safe. You keep us safe, but you also give the water sprays, and the runners and walkers really like that. Being that it is on a Sunday, we did contact the churches en route, because we do not feel that we're going to interrupt with some of the traffic and the parking for their services, but we wanted to be courteous and kind, so that we did contact all of the churches. They're so excited they're going to help us out. Cathedral, Jim Kilmartin, Center City, St. Rose, a lot of them. So we are being diligent in contacting people. We've had more support for this race as far as sponsors than any other one. But again, without the help of the council, the city staff, the fire chief, the police chief, we couldn't do it. So we want to thank you for giving us an opportunity to showcase how great Altoona is. We anticipate large numbers. The pavilion, the Dawn Divorce Pavilion, is what we're going to use. There's going to be a picnic in the pavilion, so we're going to have some hot dogs, so stop by if you're hungry, and just a good old-fashioned party. And the Lollipop Run is back. We had to cancel that last year, but Eaton Park came through for us this year, and we will have the little kids with the Lollipops. Curry Supply, since they're really big in Altoona now, they're going to be one of our sponsors as well, and they're going to provide a lot of things for us. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to do what we do.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Phyllis said, we're always open to new ideas. We take the safety of the course and the race very seriously, which we appreciate the city's support on that. But we're also open to knowing that this is something we're doing in someone else's neighborhood, not where the Y is situated. So if there are any suggestions or ideas or connections that we can make to help collaborate and make it a bigger, better, more exciting event and more of an Altoona tradition, we're always open to that conversation. And it's not too late to do something more this year. We don't have to start planning for 2022 yet. So thanks again. We really appreciate it and hope to see everyone out on the 4th.
And you're all invited to come up and participate in Mayor Pacifico. We can't wait for you to get up on the podium and introduce everybody. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Real quick, I just want to thank both of you for coming out tonight. Ran a race last year, and really appreciate especially you taking the time to contact the churches, given the fact that it was on a Sunday. I think it's very classy and respectful, so thank you.
Okay, before we move on to public comment, this morning in front of City Hall, we held a little ceremony for the retirement of Tyra, who was the city's arson investigating dog. She retired after 7 years of service and investigating over 350 fires. So thank you, Tyra, and enjoy your retirement. At this time, we will open the floor now for public comment. If anybody joining us would like to speak, you may go to the podium and state your name and address for the record. If anybody would like to call in from home, you may do so by dialing the number on the screen, and please give your name and address when asked to do so. And the floor is now open. Okay, seeing none, we will close the floor to public comment, and we will move on to the resolutions. Linda.
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Monday, May 10th, 2021. Item B is amending the 2021 HUD annual plan to include an additional allocation of funding for Housing and Community Development Administration for program year 2021 in the amount of $24,141, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all documents and certifications. Item C is approving the issuance of an economic development liquor license to J.J. Hadley and Company Brewers, LLC, which operates as Hadley's, located at 1400 to 1402 11th Avenue, Altoona, subject to compliance with the conditions as stated. Item D is amending the delegate information in Resolution 37-18 and appointing the following individuals as tax collection committee representatives of the city of Altoona: Elizabeth Mosey, primary voting delegate; Omar Strom, first alternate voting delegate; A.C. Stickle IV, second alternate voting delegate. Item E is designating the Altoona city manager as the chief administrative officer of all three of the city's pension plans, and hereby appointing Omar Strom as the city manager to be the chief administrative officer of all three city pension plans. Item F is approving a repository bid in the amount of $250 submitted by Tiffany Amy and Jonas Zimmerman of 325 Beach Avenue for property located at 324 Spruce Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item G is approving a repository bid in the amount of $100 submitted by Scott Minoia of 2527 Oak Avenue for property located at 2523 and a half to 2525 Oak Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item H is approving a repository bid in the amount of $500 submitted by Carrie Collier of 2200 10th Avenue for property located at 1009 22nd Street, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item I is approving a repository bid in the amount of $100 submitted by Richard Butterbaugh of 1451 Washington Avenue for property located at 1443 to 1445 Washington Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item J is approving a repository bid in the amount of $100 submitted by Richard Butterbaugh for property located at 1447 Washington Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item K is approving a repository bid in the amount of $300 submitted by Hazel Minnie of Avalon Road for property located at 1506 13th Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Are there any additions, any deletions, anything that needs to be pulled for a separate vote? Hearing none, I'll call for the consent vote. Vice Mayor Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Kashadi,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ickes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent, Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
and Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the consent vote passes 6-0. We have two ordinances on the agenda. The first one is for introduction, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 800-42 of the Altoona City Code as it pertains to small wireless facilities, and creates new Chapter 595 of the Altoona City Code titled Small Wireless Facilities, relating to permitting, placement, installation, and standards for small cell wireless communication facilities in the public rights-of-way. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
This ordinance was introduced by Vice Mayor Butterbaugh. We have a second ordinance for adoption, which was introduced by Mayor Pacifico, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona amending Chapter 700, Vehicles and Traffic, to create Article 11, moving violations, and adding 700-57, engine brake retarder, prohibiting the use of engine brake retarders within the City of Altoona, Pennsylvania, to provide for its administration, penalties for violations, severability of provisions, and providing an effective date. Is there a motion for adoption? Second.
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by Councilman Kashadi, seconded by Vice Mayor Butterbaugh, and I will call the roll for a vote. Vice Mayor Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Kashadi,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
No.
Councilman Ickes,
No.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent, Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico,
Yes.
and the vote passes 4-2.
Okay, moving on to city manager updates. Omar.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, just a few minutes to update you on a couple of items, several items, actually. One is, just want you to all be aware that the city has expended a great deal of time and effort in response to the recent flooding related to the torrential rainstorm that we had at the end of last week. As of today, talking with some of the different department directors, we are continuing to respond to complaints and work, for example, work with the spray park to help clear that up. So that it's an ongoing effort. I just want to let you know that it is ongoing. Another item here, just again, I think I've mentioned this to one or two of you, but not to all of you. The city's in early stages of work to try to bolster our GIS system and GIS functionality, which will enable us to give a more broad-based, kind of visually enhanced tracking and mapping of the city-related land and fixed assets, which I think is going to be valuable to all the different departments and to, eventually to the public as well. I want to let you know that we are recruiting the next HR director for the city. That has begun. I know I mentioned that before, but just want to make sure you're all up to speed on that. That began at the end of last week.
Are you still taking applications
Yes.
for that? Okay.
And then lastly, but certainly not least, I wanted to talk a little bit about, the funding related to the ARPA, the American Recovery Plan Act, and the funding associated with that. I would propose the scheduling of public hearings, or a hearing or multiple hearings or multiple meetings, I should say, at locations in the city where citizens and other stakeholders can provide input into the potential uses of those funds. So that's just a kind of a recommendation, suggestion even, that we take that approach going forward in the next couple of months to gather input from citizens and stakeholders in the community. And I don't know what council thinks of that, but we can talk about it if you'd like.
Yeah, I think having some listening sessions would be a good way to gauge ideas from the public and to receive ideas from the public on some things that we could do. And then we could later then take the advisory board that we've been discussing and use the advisory board then to help narrow down projects that we've identified. I think that could be a good way to make sure that we are being transparent with the process, that we're being open with how we're looking to spend the money, things like that. So yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Anybody else from council have any other comment on that?
No, I think it's a good idea. It's been years since we took council on the road and met outside of council chambers. That was used to be done in years past. We moved the council meeting around the city. And I think the idea of maybe having two separate, you had mentioned two? Yeah, I mean, that's.
One or two, whatever
I think
works for
two would be
council.
good, and if we could have them in different parts of the city to try to seek some citizen input on that, is worthwhile. We'll see how that goes, and if it's well attended, maybe we'd want to consider doing others. If not, but I think doing two different parts of the city would be a good thing to get citizen input.
Yeah, I support us having a public hearing or conversation on that. Going through the rules and what we are allowed to do with the funds, I think it's important to share the information, as the mayor had indicated, on transparency. The money's here for our community, so we should seek input from the community.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for us to go to the neighborhoods and hear directly the needs and then assess from there.
Okay, I will get back to you all and try to coordinate an agenda and locations that meet your needs and your schedules.
Okay, moving on to council discussion items. Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple things. First of all, Omar addressed and we discussed the ARP monies and what our next steps were going to be. We did touch on the flooding, but Nate, it seems like our problems keep moving around. I mean, there's some usual suspects that when we have hard rains get hit, but with the 21st Avenue, have they had problems in the past with downpours?
To my knowledge, where the swath came through, I mean, we have isolated areas where the inlets could be, but not anything of that size or substantial hit, I guess, or hazard. But yeah, it was weird. It was strange because the storm on the Baker Mansion side of things, I think they registered about a ½ inch of rain through the middle of town from like 18th Street, kind of like right in the middle, probably 300 yards each way. They got 6 inches in 3 hours. Yeah. And then Juniata got some too. So the effects were definitely exasperated in that area, and as they went through East End, then that's when a lot of that rain started to come down Brush Run too. So, yeah, it was really strange up there. It's the first time.
I know that hill well. I mean, I used to walk up that hill to go to Keith Junior High, so that just seemed really surprising. And certainly that's not how we want to make the Weather Channel. It would be nice if we had a beautiful sunset or sunrise that would make the Weather Channel. And I don't say that to make light to anybody who suffered damage from that, because that was really an intensive downpour. But it seemed to be pretty isolated in just certain areas.
Yes, it was.
And was there anything, they had just filled Lakemont back up, and I was curious if there was we've heard anything, any lasting, impact negatively on that, since all that work was done out there. Have we heard
When I
anything?
was talking to Teddy from Keller's, she just mentioned that when they have a substantial rain, that they have to inform the public about the potential of flooding. But she said once it stopped raining, everything went down and everything went away. So it's more of a warning
Because
than anything.
it was dredged, and the reason we dredged it was to get a lot of the sediment out, and then we just had that hard rain, and I was just curious to see if we ended up losing ground on that project. So
I actually think it was finished, and they were hoping for some rain, although I don't think they needed that
Not
much
like
rain
that
to
to
fill
test
it.
it.
But they were like to the point of filling it back up. Tim, I don't know if you have anything else or not.
Just talking with EMA, they had a study done to make sure that the dam was good, but that announcement went out
Okay.
because it's a requirement to let people downstream know that there was an issue and that they're going to release water, so that the pressure on that dam wasn't there. So
okay.
I think it worked out in everybody's advantage, though, thankfully.
All right. I had two other things. Over the weekend, we had another shooting incident involving juveniles. And that's the second one in just about 2 months that we've had. And last year, we had a homicide, all involving juveniles. And I'm just concerned. I never remember anything like that happening involving juveniles and having that many instances in such a short period of time. I did reach out to our police chief and annoyed him on vacation, and I apologize for that. But I just think that it's something worth us discussing at a future meeting, because I'm a little concerned and do not like that trend. So I hope that we can discuss that, and if that's an increase in juvenile crime, and something we can be talking about. The final thing I had is, I don't know if anybody, and maybe this ties into the flooding, but with regard to the McCrory's building, I don't know if after that rain, if they got more water in the basement or not. You're saying yes?
They had more water in it before the rain.
Okay, all right.
Filling back up. We had it down to about maybe 4 inches deep. That's how low we were able to get it down to have this environmental study and the structural study done. Within probably 5 to 6 days later, there was already 3 feet of water.
Okay.
And I think recently there was actually a little bit more, so it's filling back up.
All right, I'm ready to move forward with doing something with the McCrory's building, and I don't know what the sense is on council, but I'm just afraid
I was
that-
there Monday. When it's my turn, I'll go over what happened Monday a little
Okay.
bit. But
Yeah, I'm ready to move
Yeah.
forward and see us do something on that. I'm just afraid that the longer we wait, we're gonna end up having to deal with a problem that we don't wanna deal with. So, and I appreciate the time, gentlemen.
Thank you, Councilman Carper.
I have nothing additional to add. I was going to discuss the flooding as well, but I think we've touched on it, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Butterball.
okay, let's start with the good. 39th Street looked good on Friday, even though they got a little less rain. But I thought Nate needed to hear some good news after his weekend, so good job there. That was our last storm project that was completed. Also, do you want to talk about Baker Mansion, or do you want me to? Or the mayor and I got to go up to the dedication there of the Meridian stone that they moved from the Chestnut Avenue project back in 2001, and they placed it up at Baker Mansion, and that was really neat to see that as a survey monument. And then it reminded me of working on the Chestnut Avenue project back when I was much younger. But very, very interesting, and like to thank the folks at Baker Mansion for the opportunity to be there and take part in that. That was the good. Let's go to the bad. got to visit several blighted properties over the weekend, and was able to make some headway in cleaning up a little bit of that issue. But I do want to thank the codes, Rebecca and codes. You guys are doing very good work, and I know a lot of folks get impatient when it comes to blighted property and getting those things cleaned up, but there's a lot of legalities there, and I try to assure people to please be patient. Our codes folks are very busy this time of year, and but they are working very hard at getting these things cleaned up. And so that was the good, the bad. Hey, let's go to the ugly. Let's talk about McCrory's. I thought that there was a good opportunity there, and they were offered what I thought was above fair market value, to say the least. I toured it Monday. I was there with the folks involved. There was about 2.5 feet of water in the basement at that time before the storm that came later in the week. And I was really hoping that they would have accepted that deal. I am convinced that it is going to be very difficult for a private deal to be made there. And I don't even know if it's a money thing. And I spoke at length with Rebecca and with some of the folks. And sometimes people get attached to the buildings, and you know, I don't want to speculate, but sometimes people have emotional ties to their property and things of that nature, and maybe it's a situation where even though there aren't the means there to fix it, perhaps the current owners don't want to give up on it, and it really puts us in a tough spot. But what makes McCrory's tougher than a lot of other dealings with blight is when you get into the subject of private property rights, especially when folks are paying their taxes like they are, it makes it even tougher, because people, certainly private property rights are a foundational aspect of our nation, and so there's only so much the government really can do. But it is also a situation where I spoke with several professionals, and if something is not done before winter, the odds of losing that building go up exponentially. So we do have to do something. It looks and appears that there is an impasse when it comes to a private deal being made for whatever reason. And so I agree with Councilman Kelly. I don't like typically the eminent domain route. However, on this, I don't believe we have a choice at this point.
Well, I don't either, but I mean, I have the longest length of service here of anybody up here, and I can tell you that we haven't exercised that since I've been on council. I think the last time City Council exercised its right of eminent domain was with the 8th Avenue project or 9th Avenue project. 8th Avenue project, right? So I'm just afraid that, I agree, property rights are very important to me, but we also have an obligation to the other people who have invested in the downtown. I think that building
Yes.
is still at a point where we can save it and
Yes.
something great can be done with it. But I think if we don't take action, I think we've allowed considerable time now. We've made a lot of good faith efforts. Tim Heilman has probably been in that building more than he wants to be. I just think we need to talk to our solicitor and see what our next steps would be.
Well, I mean, certainly the council would have the authority to pursue eminent domain. First of all, the condition of the building. There's an issue of public safety, one aspect of it. There are other avenues under that code where we clearly would have the authority to do it. There's a process set forth in the state statutes as to how the process works. You file the notice of taking. At that point, the property owner can file preliminary objections if they don't think there's a basis for doing what you're doing. Assuming that doesn't occur or those are overruled, then it comes down to what's the fair market value of the property.
Was
And-
there an appraisal done on that a few years back? I hate to put you all on the spot, but
I mean, honestly,
for
I'm
some
not aware
reason
of
that's
that.
coming to mind. Yeah.
I'm not aware.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
So if challenged, I mean, is there any potential, like, there's no way it would be done before winter, if it was successfully challenged, there's no way it would be done before winter, in any case, correct?
Well, I hate, typical lawyer, it depends, okay?
Yeah, there's not a straightforward answer, because,
Yeah.
because even with this process, the property owner still has rights.
Yes.
And you can't circumvent their property rights. It's spelled out in the law. But I think if the longer we wait, we may have waited too long now. I mean, I think it's time to get it in gear. Maybe this will speed things up. I don't know, but we haven't done an appraisal. I presume that will be part of the process, is that we would have the opportunity to make an offer what we think, and they'd be able to counter. And if we're too far apart, then we'd end up going to, would that be the Board of View that would?
Yeah, the way it normally works is the first step is a board of view,
Okay.
which generally is, an attorney and then also some people from the real estate industry. It's like a 3-person board. They take evidence, they hear, the conflicting appraisals, and then they basically come up with their own opinion as to what they think it is. If either side doesn't like it, doesn't agree with it, they can then appeal it de novo to the Court of Common Pleas, which de novo, what that means is the decision of the Board of View has no legal binding effect on the judge. The judge hears the evidence, and he or she then will make their own determination in that regard. I can tell you frequently through that process, judges will really urge parties to
Yeah.
figure it out. Councilman Carper, getting back to what you were alluding to, as far as if the property owner wants to challenge the legal authority of the council it's trying to say, well, you're taking it but not for a proper means, that would be by preliminary objection. If that happens, then you're going to have legal briefs filed, you're going to have a legal argument in front of the court. A time frame on that can really vary, because obviously with the last 15 months, my experience right now, in the courts, they work very diligently, but they got a lot on their dockets right now. So if you go down that road, it could be a couple months before you get a decision on that. Then if you get the decision, they say, yes, the city, you know what, you're in the right, you can do this. Then you're going to get back to well, what's it worth? And if you can't come to an agreement, then you're dealing with the board of view process that I just alluded to.
So what's the first step?
First step is to file a notice of taking.
And that would require us to take a vote on that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, our next meeting is actually a work session, but would we have time to add that to the agenda, and that need to be advertised?
Yeah, if you're gonna do voting, yeah, I would advertise it as such.
I mean, I just feel like the clock is ticking, and
And it's important to remind everybody of the patience of our codes department here. I mean, how long's it been? The better part of a decade since citations started being issued. I know they're up to, what, $12,000 in fines being issued over that probably by now. So it's not like there hasn't been a good amount of patience displayed already.
I know it's not my turn yet, but I guess I'm going to just piggyback off the conversation that's taking place. I think it would be important for us to perhaps know the backstory on how we got here and how it's taken a decade or more for, unfortunately, we're at this crossroads. But I think this body and our city operations, we need to make sure that we never get to this situation again. And that's not against any specific city employees. Please understand that. But I think that us knowing that exactly to a T would be beneficial. But
I think this is just one really glaring example, though. I mean, this thing's been a sore thumb for quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and I mean, we have a building that's in really bad shape, and yet everyone sitting at this table and staff knows that there's interest in doing something with this building. Well, we still have a shot to save it, but it's going to require action of this group of council to do something on this. And I think we've seen enough investment in downtown. I don't want to end up like that church on 7th Avenue where we get faced with having to tear something down and spend taxpayers' dollars to tear something down.
In
That
addition to the taxpayer money we've already paid out
exactly,
on
yeah.
these studies, et cetera, that we're not going to be able to recoup.
And that's the key to the whole argument, because you have the doctrine of private property rights, but after that, you got to also look at the doctrine of trespass. And at what point is somebody's lack of effort and blight trespassing not only on the neighbors adjacent to them, but if we don't do something, we're looking at a major trespass on every taxpayer in Altoona. And that's what justifies, in my mind, the opportunity to proceed with this.
So what we can do is put together some sort of a historical summary of the property and actions on the property for the June 28th meeting, and then you can advertise that as a voting meeting if we're in agreement.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Nickus.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to thank Jody Cessna and her group at the Central Pennsylvania Community Foundation for hosting the Flag Day ceremony yesterday. I know that my son Samuel enjoyed the program very much, and the opportunity to interact with our firefighters and our police officers. So I think his day was made, and it was really nice to have a gathering like that. Councilman Kelly brings up an important point to which I've shared my views with Police Chief Merrill and City Manager Strom regarding our police, and I feel that it's really imperative for us to get back to the pre-numbers of where we were pre-2021 with our police department. I have some serious concerns from a community standpoint with the really the increase of shootings and some homicides, and
These are all juveniles too.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's really alarming to me.
yeah. So I mean, I think we really have to provide that support because it's fundamental to the base of our community. I touched on my thoughts on McCory's, so I'll save that. You've already heard my statements on that. Manager Strom, we had discussions at the last meeting, as reported on by the Altoona Mirror today, in today's Altoona Mirror, about employees and the mask situation. Can I ask for an update as where we are on that?
Yeah, so 13 days from today, the governor, or if not sooner, the governor's mask mandate will end, and at that time, if not sooner, the city will stop requiring the wearing of masks.
Okay. That's everything I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Kashadi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you to all the staff members, Public Works Department, Codes, Fire Department. You know, this time of year, you're all pretty much inundated with calls. So to be able to deal with what you dealt with this flooding, what, six inches of water in 30 minutes, you said? 1.8, 1, 2, 3 out. Yeah, I mean, that's going above and beyond, so I just wanted to say thanks, and on behalf of the citizens too. You know, thanks for everything you're doing. And to Manager Strong, talk about being baptized by fire, but you know, thanks for you know, coming on board and hitting the ground running. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. Second, I don't want to harp too long or much further on McCrory's and jump on the bandwagon, but I did just want to kind of put in that I think we're all on board to do something and to move forward with McCrory's. And the way that I think about it is that if we don't, at this point, what we're actually doing is punishing those businesses that are trying to drive our downtown, that are moving into downtown, and giving people an incentive to further business downtown. You know, these trailblazers, like today, we have, you know, Hadley's here, just purchased another building, looking to grow, and these are trailblazers that are willing to work with us in downtown and maybe, you know, go over a couple of difficulties or obstacles that other businesses are definitely watching. They're definitely watching how well those businesses are doing and what we're doing about it to help. So I just wanted to put that out there. So I think we're all on the same page here. That just keep in mind, if I know we have to tread within legal bounds and we have to tread lightly, but keep in mind, if we don't do something, that's actually what we're actually punishing the people who are willing to bring our downtown back. So, okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good points.
Questions from the media? Bill?
Bill, it's good to see you at the podium.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward here with this computer and the podium.
Actually, the lectern.
I think it's safer, Bill, when you're standing up instead of on that chair, too.
Oh, okay.
Bill's going digital.
Yeah. I can type a lot easier, a lot faster than I can write. Let's see. How much, Dave, if you can say, how much, like what amount was offered for McCoy's?
Nah, I out of respect for both parties, I'll leave the details out of it.
Can you say what type of organization was making the offer?
The type that was able and had the means to do great things with that building and put the infrastructural investment in that would be necessary to get that place.
Bill, I spoke
Add it again.
with Steve McKnight at ABCD Corp. I talked to Steve end of last week and the beginning of this week to get an update. And he was able to tell me that there was some back and forth negotiation. There was an offer made and it was rejected.
Yes.
And
There were at least two offers then.
Yeah,
made.
so-
Yeah.
So, and that was that conversation with Steve was the basis on me moving forward with this. So we've had some time. It's certainly been in the news. Everybody has talked about this. And so there was an opportunity. They weren't able to come to an agreement. I don't know that, given the current circumstances, that a private sale is going to happen. I think it's time for us to look at our other options as a municipality. And that's why I brought this up tonight.
Dave, when you say there was a second offer, you mean two separate parties offered?
Well,
to the-
I think we know of at least two.
There were
And,
three interested parties interested in the building initially that I'm aware of.
And two of them made offers too, that were rejected? Is that kind of?
That's how it appears, yeah.
Okay. If you care to say at this point, and maybe this is for Tom, what would be the basis, the rationale for the eminent domain
Yeah, I
taking?
mean, I'm gonna basically look at the eminent domain code to, put anyone that would fit in this scenario. The public safety aspect to me is a huge one, given the condition of the building. And quite frankly, I think that's a hard one to dispute and a hard one to fight. There are other reasons that you can do that, and I think some of them, while legal, there's some people get concerned over, to what extent are you invading personal property rights. I know as I look at this, I'm looking at it more from a public safety standpoint.
Mhm. It is based, I don't remember the name of it, but the Connecticut
Yes.
U.S. Supreme Court case
Yeah,
is
there
the
was a
basis
Supreme
for-
Court case, this was it's a while ago now, of course, the years go by, where basically a municipality condemned a piece of property because they said we can develop it better than, for better economic means than you can. And it will increase our tax base and it was a very controversial decision, but the U.S. Supreme Court said that was permissible.
And Justice O'Connor, I think, penned a great dissent for
Yeah.
that I would.
And, I would caution, say, the facts of that scenario, of that case are significantly different from this. That was, at least as I understand it, that was a situation, I don't think you were dealing with a dilapidated building, code violations, things of that nature. That was, I think a developer wanted to put something in, the property owner said, I don't want to sell it to you. And the municipality stepped in and basically made it happen.
Yeah, they forced the sale
Yeah.
for for the development, and there was really no problems with the existing property.
Exactly.
This is a
Which-
different.
This is a different animal.
Different
Now,
situation.
now, if
here.
anything happened down there, I know I would not want our first responders to have to go in that building to put out a fire or do anything. Like, it's to the point now where,
Is
right,
it that
Chief
serious,
Allen?
Chief?
That building's marked. If you notice, there's a sign out front,
Yes.
the stop sign with the white X.
Yep, yep,
That signifies to all of our firefighters that building is a do not enter.
yes.
Unless there's an immediate danger to life safety and we know where that person is and we can get them out. I mean, it's chained up and locked up. And there's no way you can enter the building, but, stranger things have happened. But we will not go in there unless there's an absolute definite chance of getting somebody out alive.
I personally was in that building 3 months ago with Chief Heilman and a couple other folks. So I'm looking at this from it's more of a public safety standpoint. We got a dilapidated building that's in violation of codes, significant code violations. The property owner, again, I understand I've been here less than a year, but my understanding of the history of this, this has been going around and around for several years now. Property owners had significant opportunity to remedy this, and they have just failed to do it. And now it's, the condition of the building continues to deteriorate, and the council all mentioned great reasons as far as, hey, we got all this other economic development going on down there, but I think from a legal standpoint, I'm looking at it more like we got a public safety issue that needs addressed. And I think, the council has to look at this. If the property owner after significant opportunity doesn't address it, then someone is gonna have to.
Chief, there was a relatively recently a structural engineer that looked at the building, correct? Like within the last few months? Yeah. Could you reshare that with, or whatever, I can't remember the email, if you sent one to council, just
Yeah.
like with I think you sent one
Yeah.
a while back. Yeah, if we could dig that up at some point.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Has anybody from council actually heard from the owner?
Not
what
the
they're
owner,
thinking?
but the representative that lives here in Altoona.
I've
Yeah.
never heard from anyone from that entity.
Has that representative, John, you're talking about,
Yeah.
has he said anything to you about it? About what they're thinking?
Yeah, I was there, what would it be, 8 days ago? And at that point, the conversation was just between the two entities, and then I left it at that. I mean, Councilman Kelly's been working on this, I've been working on this, and others. I mean, we have been trying to do everything we can to get that into a situation where somebody can fix it up, and it's just one of those things where,
We tear a lot of, we've torn down.
Yeah.
We don't just tear, we've torn down a lot of buildings.
yep,
And historically in this city where, because of one thing or another, the building has gone into disrepair, it ends up a tax sale or something like that. And it's one thing to be able to buy a property. It's another thing to be able to do something with it. And this is, I think, a classic example of that
Agreed.
with the best intentions. But it's going to take somebody, and there are people that have some significant wherewithal and experience in doing something that are interested in the property. I just don't want to have to close 11th Avenue down because this thing collapses and it's in the street.
Right.
and it's a dangerous, like going inside. It does, like, all you got to do is take one step in and look around, and you realize, okay, nobody is. It appears that if anybody has done anything to improve it, lots of luck pointing that out to anybody.
But is there anything anybody can share with what John has said, or what the actual owner has said?
I know from in years past when I brought a group in from Harrisburg who was interested in the building and they wanted to purchase the building, he was interested in being the developer of it and leasing it to them, and they were not interested in that because they saw the condition of the building at that point. And I'm being pretty blunt about that, but that was the situation. And I believe at the time he was living in there on a cot.
in other words, the representative was wanting to lease to the Harrisburg person, and the Harrisburg person said, forget it, because it looks too bad, is what you're saying?
They didn't want him involved in the project because
Oh.
they had seen his inabilities at that point to do anything with it.
Okay.
So,
Dealing with any blighted property, it's tough. Like it's a challenge, and it's nice, you know, that we accept that challenge. But in this case, it's a big blighted property right in the middle of downtown. But even these little houses are a typical residential property. You get folks that are emotionally attached, and it's theirs, and they want it to remain theirs, and the poor folks just don't have the means to fix it again, and they don't want to lose hope. They don't want to give up their property, but at the same time, they don't have the means to do what needs to be done. And so it creates a situation where you have a danger to the folks around them.
and Bill, conversely, the property owner hasn't had any discussion with us. This thing's been on the front page of your paper for how many issues? For how many
Yeah.
months?
Ain't that?
You think the property owner would maybe want to say, well, can we come to some kind of agreement here? We haven't heard from the property owner. You know, so I think you have to ask that question. Don't just ask us that.
I mean,
That's a great point.
I mean, we go,
That's because it's not our fault.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
we're
we
not
do-
the owner. We're, you know.
And we enforce from a codes and compliance standpoint. Yes, when you own property, realistically, I'm guessing, you know, one of your biggest obligations from a legal standpoint is that you're not, you know, if the property's not going for tax sale, etc. So, but if your grass is too high, you get notice of that. If you have, you know, the roof blown off your home, you get notice for that. If you have gutters missing, you get notices for that, and you go through the process. This is the bullseye, essentially, of poor property management and dereliction. So it's not, I mean, I think I share all the sentiment here. It's not the ideal situation to be in, but definitely from a safety standpoint, and Chief Heilman has said that, I mean, if something happens at the building, unless someone isn't trapped in there, et cetera, that we feel we can get out, our first responders don't respond to that facility.
They're gonna take care of the property next door.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're gonna take care of the property. That's what they do in Detroit.
So so other than this thing actually being torn down, right now, it's not going to get any better.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is not Connecticut 2005, where somebody thinks they can do a better job. This is complete blighted property issue here.
Nate, did I hear you right? That the part of the city where like 24 First Avenue sits between 12th and 11th Street got 6 inches of rain in 3 hours the other day. Wow. Okay. Is that the kind of volume that a perfectly functioning sewer system couldn't handle in any case?
No, I don't think that anything, you would never design to something like that. I mean, it's just, you would try to prevent too much development in areas like, you know, that you would have a floodway such as that, but it's just an extreme amount of water.
Nate, did you share with me that the Water Authority mentioned that there was 500 million gallons of water that they were?
Through the bypass gates at Tuckahoe, they received over, it equated to, in that period of time, 500 million gallons in 24 hours, which it wouldn't have been. That was what the rate was at the high end of what happened there. So it's,
No, it's not that total, but the rate.
it's
would have
not the
been-
total, but if it would happen for 24 hours, but that's like, so the individual that I talked to said that was top 5 in 35 years. So.
You mean for a rate?
Yeah, top 5 highest rated like storms coming through. Maybe not time-wise, length of time, but intensity of the storm.
The system on 21st Avenue actually worked to its full ability, or that would have stayed flooded a lot longer. It went up and it went down actually fairly quickly because the system did function. It just wasn't big enough to handle it all at once like that.
Right. Regarding the Jake break thing, the ordinance, I just want to make sure I understand it properly. The ordinance gives you blanket authorization to create a prohibition, but the prohibition is actually only on 31st Street, correct?
Yeah, that right now it's 31st Street, and as we discussed at a prior meeting, if you want to, anytime you want to add areas, you have to get the PennDOT, study and approval. And the ordinance is drafted in such a way that if there are additional areas in the future that the city wishes to have studies completed and the PennDOT says yes, that would be appropriate, the ordinance can be amended very succinctly and easily.
Okay. I didn't catch quickly enough. Who voted no to the Jake break ordinance? Joe and Jesse, okay. Care to say why?
I mean, we heard from the chief that he thinks that it sounds like it's pretty unenforceable to me. And so, I mean, any kind of call that would, if somebody reports that they heard a Jake break, I mean, there's nothing that the police department is going to be able to do about that. And to me, it represents an undue burden on the police department.
I share those similar views, but my position hasn't changed from a month or so ago, that I think it's pretty difficult to tell someone that is using a DOT-approved mechanism to reduce speed for safety that those can't be used within the city limits.
Okay. Could somebody say what the significance of appointing Omar as the chief administrator for the pension plans is?
So that was done several months ago with the prior manager. It was done several years ago with the then existing manager.
So there's no difference really?
No, it's no difference, and it's really something that was required by the Auditor General whenever they made their trip through the city here.
Right. Sorry. Oh, does regarding the July 4th race, did council have to do anything formally to approve that, or is it just a
No.
courtesy that they came here, basically?
Yeah, it's a courtesy. They filled out a public gathering application and went through the proper channels the same way that anybody else would if they wanted to hold an event downtown.
Okay. And is there any update on the advisory committee for the ARP?
No.
I think Omar referenced that in his manager's comments, that looking to do 2 public meetings and get citizen input from that. And
Right.
that
So
would be
that
held
would
later
actually
this
take
summer.
place after those public meetings, or that would come into play after the public meetings?
Right, that would be an information gathering session, so.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.